Today we're going to make sweet potato casserole. It has a rich sweet potato filling that's sweetened just a little bit with maple syrup and then a crunchy pecan streusel topping. Oh, it's to die for. First step is we're going to make the sweet potato puree. So this is more sweet potatoes than you would need for a sweet potato casserole, but I'm going to use the same puree in another recipe, and so I'm going to save myself some time. So first step is we're going to peel our sweet potatoes. So I am going to do that on a piece of parchment here just to make my cleanup easier. I definitely use a wide peeler for this. It's just going to be so much faster. Next step is just to cut pieces. So you don't really have to worry about, what they look like or what size they are. You just want them to be all roughly the same size. So just be careful. I like to use a big knife for this task. Sweet potatoes can be a little tough. Okay, so now we're going to take all these and put them in our pot. Okay, so now we have everything in our pot, and we're just going to cover it with water just to cover, and we're going to boil it. Alright, so I've covered it with water just to cover, not like all the way up, and then I'm just going to pop this on the stove, kind of over high heat, and then I'm just going to let that cook until they're tender, so you can poke them with a knife. Or I prefer to poke them with my best friend, the cake tester. And so as soon as they poke easily through and back out with no resistance, then they're done. So our sweet potatoes are done. So I'm just going to turn that off. And I'm going to grab this carefully and I'm going to go over to my sink and dump it through a colander to strain out the water. Okay, so I've got my strained sweet potatoes. I'm going to put them through a ricer. So I've got a bowl here to kind of squeeze them into. You can put them in a food processor, and then you can pass them through a sieve. Whatever you want to do, whatever's easiest for you. I find this super easy. So I also like the ricer because it kind of gets rid of some of the strands that happen. Now if I wanted these to be a lot smoother, then I would not use a ricer and I would put them in a food processor. To make the filling for the sweet potato casserole, we are going to crack 1 egg. Now I'm making a smaller dish. The recipe, as I have it written on my blog, is twice this size, but I am but one person, so just go ahead and whisk that egg really well. And we're going to go ahead and add our butter to our puree. So our puree is still hot, so it should have no problem just kind of melting into it. If you do want this, again, if you want this smoother, you can put it in a food processor or, use an immersion blender. So my butter is almost melted. I've got my butter in there, and I'm going to go ahead and add my other ingredients. So I have 1 egg. Okay, so just go ahead and get that in there. And then we've got a bit of vanilla, a bit of salt. This is kosher salt. You can add more or less to taste. Just a bit of milk. You can use heavy cream if you'd like. And then maple syrup. Okay, so we're just going to pour this into our baking dish. I've preheated my oven to 350 degrees, important to note. And just pour this in there. And just spread it out. Alright, and we are ready to make our topping. So the first step is we're going to toast our pecans. So I'm just going to spread them out on a baking sheet. I bought pre-chopped ones, just makes my life easier, but of course you can chop them yourself. And then I'm going to go ahead and melt my butter. I can do it on the stovetop. I'm going to pop it in the microwave. Okay, and then in my bowl I'm going to combine, I've got dark brown sugar here. I've got flour, just AP, it's fine. A bit of salt, kosher salt. And then I'm going to add like a dash, whatever that is, of cinnamon. And then I'm going to dump my butter into my dry mixture here. Okay, so just mix all those ingredients together until you kind of get like a nice little kind of, it's almost like a thick paste. And then we're gonna add our pecans. Okay, so we've got our pecans, in they go, and just mix that up. And just be careful because the pecans obviously are just out of the oven. If yours are cool, then you can obviously handle them with your hands, but I'm not gonna do that because they're a touch warm. So we're just gonna take our topping, and we're gonna put it on top. Again, you can do this with your hands if you want, but my pecans are really hot, so I'm not going to do that. All right. And now it's ready to go in the oven. So I preheated my oven to 350 degrees. I'm gonna pop this in there. We're gonna bake it until the filling is nice and bubbly and the top is crisp and crunchy. So, I mean, anywhere, depends on your oven, but like 25, 30 minutes. Boop. So our sweet potato casserole is out of the oven. It's nice and toasty and golden brown on top. Some of the pecans that were on the top got extra toasty, which is amazing. And the filling is fully cooked. And we are ready to let this cool just a touch before we serve it or we taste it. We are ready to taste. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of dish this up. Oh yes, we are ready to try. Do you see this? It's like a bright, beautiful orange because we boiled the potatoes instead of steaming them in the oven. And like the topping is super crispy. Dig in there. Divine. There's a little sweetness from the maple syrup. Not enough to make it taste mapley, but just enough to be like, what's that? In the filling, which is like nice and creamy and smooth. And then the topping is crisp and brown sugary with the perfect bites of pecans. Oh,